The metal rang out like a bell hit with fury. Crack! The last shot echoed across the concrete walls of the Navy SEAL training facility. Smoke drifted off the barrel of the rifle. Every man in the room turned to look. No one spoke. A faint ringing in the ears was the only sound left as the final bullet settled into the target board 200 yards away. 10 bullseyes. In a row, the girl stood still, the rifle resting against her shoulder, her breathing steady. She didn't grin. She didn't gloat. She just looked at the colonel. He stood there with his arms crossed, lips drawn tight, his red face unreadable. His mouth moved, barely. "Run that again," he said to the range officer. A junior SEAL jogged out to the target, then stopped. He stared. Then he ran back, holding up the paper target with shaking hands. "Sir, all 10, dead center. Not just in the circle. I mean, split the mark." The room buzzed. Someone laughed, a short, nervous chuckle. The colonel didn't move. The girl set the rifle down with care. She adjusted the strap on her black tank top, sweat dripping from her collarbone. Her name tag read, Reynolds. The colonel blinked. "Just once." "You must have cheated," he muttered. She stepped forward. "You want me to do it blindfolded?" Someone gasped. Another laughed again, louder. This time the colonel did too, finally, but it was an ugly, guttural sound. He leaned in close. "You'll never be one of us, girl." And then came the voice from the door. Low, sharp. "She already is." Everyone turned. It was the SEAL commander. His tone cut through the room like wire through flesh. "She just broke every long-range marksmanship record we've got. And you laughed at her request to even try. Consider this your notice, Colonel." Silence. Then everything moved at once. Yelling, boots stomping, chairs scraping. But by then, Reynolds was already walking out. And none of them knew what she'd been through to get here. Not yet. 6 months earlier. The Alabama air was thick with heat and regret. Jasmine Reynolds sat on the roof of her Mema's house in Montgomery, staring at the train tracks that cut the neighborhood in two. Her hands were stained with grease from helping Mr. Carter fix his truck again, and her braids were tied up in a loose bun with a ragged bandana. The sun dipped low. Cicadas screamed in the trees. Her phone buzzed. Another rejection. She threw it across the roof. It landed on the shingles with a thud. Her brother, Marcus, climbed up behind her. "Trying to fly that thing," he joked, sitting next to her. "Trying to forget it," she said. He didn't push, just nodded. "You really want to do this SEAL thing, huh?" She picked up the phone. Screen cracked now. "I want it more than I want air." Marcus leaned back, hands behind his head. "They don't want girls, especially not girls who look like us." She nodded. "I know." They watched the clouds roll in. She remembered the day she saw that SEAL recruitment video on YouTube, the one where the camera moved in slow motion over muddy boots and cold eyes, where the woman narrating said, "Some are born to be warriors. The rest just try to keep up." That voice stuck in her head. Jasmine had always been stronger than the other kids. Faster, sharper. She boxed in high school, worked 2 jobs through college, and still ran 5 miles every morning before class. She didn't brag. Didn't need to. But none of that seemed to matter when she walked into the recruiter's office 3 weeks ago and asked about SEAL training. He smirked, flat out laughed. "You're better off with the Air Force. Or maybe just stick to fitness coaching." She didn't reply, just walked out, got in her beat-up Honda, and cried behind the wheel for 10 full minutes. That night, she signed up anyway. Submitted every form, every test, every proof of physical excellence. Every letter of recommendation from her boxing coach, her Marine Corps uncle, and even her old chemistry professor who once called her the most disciplined student he'd ever taught. Still, the rejections came. Until that one email. Naval Special Warfare Preparatory School. Pre-assessment trial slot available. Report to Great Lakes, Illinois. 0600 hours, January 8th. She stayed at it for 10 minutes, blinking. Then she screamed, loud enough to wake up the neighbors. Marcus watched her pace the kitchen that night, rattling off logistics, travel, money, gear, prep workouts. "You ready for this?" he asked. "I was born ready." He smiled, but it was sad. "They'll come for you, Jazz. Harder than they come for anyone else." I know. She did. She just didn't know how bad it would get. The first day at Great Lakes was cold enough to freeze bone. Jasmine stepped off the bus and joined the line of other candidates. White guys. Tall guys. Guys with jaws like anvils and tattoos across their necks. A few women. All white. No one looked like her. She pulled her coat tighter, adjusted her duffel strap, and said nothing. An instructor walked down the line, barking names. Then he paused when he got to her. Reynolds. Yes, sir. He looked her up and down. Admin must have made a mistake. They didn't. He kept walking. We'll see. She heard the snickers, saw the side eyes. She didn't react. That week, she ran until her legs shook, swam until her arms burned, lifted weights until her palms bled. She beat half the men in PT, outswam most of the field, hit every target on the range. But she couldn't crack their silence. In the chow hall, she sat alone. In the barracks, they ignored her, except for one. Petty Officer Lane. Tall, lean, crew cut, Boston accent. A sniper instructor. He saw her on the range one day, taking apart an M4 with expert hands. You ever fire one of these before? She nodded. I've hunted deer since I was 11. He raised an eyebrow. You any good? Better than you, probably. He laughed. And just like that, she had her first ally. Lane started giving her tips on the side. Helped her with the tougher marks. Wind drift, humidity, long-distance patterns. She soaked it in like rain in the desert. Then came the evaluations. Candidates dropped like flies. A busted ankle. A panic attack. A failed dive. Jasmine kept going. Until the colonel showed up. A week before final assessment. He stood at the front of the range, flanked by officers. You want to be SEALs, he barked. Prove it. Today, you get 5 shots at 200 yards. If you don't score at least 3 bullseyes, you're out. He called names. Men stepped forward. Missed. Hit. Fumbled. Then it was her turn. She stepped forward, adjusting her stance. The colonel squinted. You lost, sweetheart. No, sir. He snorted. This isn't a college rock club. This is SEAL training. She didn't flinch. May I proceed? He looked at the clipboard, then looked at her. Fine. Amuse me. She loaded the rifle. First shot, bullseye. Murmurs behind her. Second shot, bullseye. Silence. Third, bullseye. The colonel frowned. Fourth, bullseye. He stepped forward. Enough. She looked up. I've got one more. He sneered. No need. You've made your point. She didn't move. I came here to finish. Fifth shot. Dead center. The room fell still. The colonel turned red. You'll never make it through the next phase, he muttered, walking off. Jasmine stood there, still breathing hard. Then a hand clapped her shoulder. It was Lane. He leaned in. That was the best shooting I've seen in 5 years. She didn't smile. Good, she said, because I'm just getting started. The wind off Lake Michigan tore through her uniform as Jasmine stood at attention, sweat cooling into ice on her back. Her trigger finger twitched. The rifle still hummed with the heat of her last shot. The range had gone quiet again, everyone digesting what they'd just seen. But Jasmine knew better than to let her guard down. One moment of pride could cost everything. She stayed locked in position, not even glancing at the colonel as he stormed off. Lane stood next to her, still holding the paper target. 5 perfect dead center shots. Come on, he said quietly. They'll want to talk to you after this. They or he. He didn't answer. The debrief room was small, the kind of place where they brought candidates in to break them down, piece by piece. Jasmine had seen it. She'd seen a kid come out of this room with tears running down his face, packing his things 30 minutes later. Now it was her turn. She sat, back straight, hands on her thighs, and waited. The door opened. The SEAL commander stepped in. She didn't know his name yet, just that he carried a weight in every room, and that even the colonel flinched when he was around. He closed the door and sat across from her. You know what just happened out there? Yes, sir. You just broke every recorded long-range marksmanship score in SEAL prep history, male or female. Jasmine didn't speak. The commander leaned forward. You're not just good, Reynolds. You're something else. What's driving you? The question hit her harder than she expected. She didn't speak right away, because to answer it honestly meant going back to places she didn't like to revisit. She was 9 when her daddy died. It was a robbery gone wrong at a gas station. Wrong place, wrong time. He was trying to grab milk for breakfast. She remembered how her mama stood in the kitchen, eyes blank, just staring a spoon in an empty cup, over and over. After that, Jasmine learned early, no one was coming to save you. You had to do it yourself. She learned how to punch before she hit puberty, how to aim a rifle by the time she was 11. Her uncle, a retired Marine, took her under his wing when it became clear no school counselor had the time or patience to deal with her discipline problems. What they called problems, he called instinct. She started waking up at 4 a.m. to train, kept journals of sniper physics, memorized every Navy SEAL documentary she could get her hands on. She joined Rotkin High School, only to be told she was too intense. She didn't care. She was done asking for permission. And yet, no matter how perfect she made herself, they still found a way to keep her out. Until now. I want to be the best, she said finally. Not just good enough. Not tolerated. The best. The commander sat back, watching her. His eyes softened, just a touch. You've got a rough road ahead, Reynolds. You think that bullseye sheet out there means anything? You're still black, female, and in a room full of men who think you're a joke. Some of them want you to fail. I know. You'll have to be twice as sharp, 10 times as patient. I am. He stood. We'll see. The next morning, she woke up to silence, which was unusual. Normally, the alarm would scream at 0400. Boots would slam into floors. Showers would hiss. Voices would curse. Today, nothing. She checked the clock. 0432. Hell no. She slid off the top bunk, landing like a cat, and opened the door to the corridor. It was dark. Then she heard it. Laughter. From outside. She followed the sound to the sandpit. All 28 remaining candidates were already out there, running drills, sweating, grunting, pushing through pain. And she hadn't been told. Her chest tightened. They are trying to freeze me out. She didn't waste time. Threw on her boots, tied them while sprinting. By the time she joined the pit, the instructor barely looked at her. How nice of you to join us, Reynolds. The rest of the men didn't hide their smirks. 10 burpees for every minute you were late. She hit the ground and started. 1, 2, 3. By 30, her arms burned. By 50, she couldn't feel her thighs. By 70, her vision blurred. At 90, she blacked out for a second. But she kept going. At 100, she stood up, chest heaving, mouth dry. The instructor said nothing, just moved on. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't angry. She was focused, and she knew the game now. They weren't going to break her with one moment. They were going to try and chip her away, day by day. Later that week, the swimming challenge came. 10 laps underwater. It was already a brutal task, made worse by the cold. But someone had tampered with her gear. Her fins were missing from her locker, replaced with a mismatched pair. They didn't fit right. One kept sliding off. She almost didn't finish lap 4. She could hear the others finishing ahead of her, dragging themselves out, panting, laughing. She didn't stop. On lap 6, she cramped. Her thigh locked up. She floated to the surface, nearly gasping, but not quite. She flipped herself over and kept kicking. Lap 8. Her body screamed. Lap 10. She finished dead last. But she finished. As she climbed out, she met the eyes of the colonel, standing far off, watching silently. He said nothing, just turned and walked away. By week 5, only 10 candidates remained. Reynolds was still standing. Lane started giving her more attention, more notes, more corrections. You know what your biggest weakness is, he said one afternoon after a long-range session. She shook her head. You still think you have something to prove. You don't. You already proved it. Now you're just trying not to break. She looked at him. I'm not trying. He smiled, almost proud. Then you're ready. For what? For Hell Week. She didn't sleep that night. Hell Week was legend. 5.5 days of no sleep, constant cold, non-stop drills, surf torture, log PT, Boat carries, runs, swims, screaming, pain. Candidates hallucinated. Some quit by the first sunrise. Jasmine stayed awake that whole night, staring at the ceiling, her stomach coiled. By morning, she was ready. Or so she thought. It started with a 2 a.m. wake-up. Horns, sirens, smoke. They burst into the barracks like a war zone. Everyone out. No time for gear. Just run. She sprinted barefoot into the freezing dark, joining the chaos. They were pushed to the surf, dropped into the icy water, then up onto the beach. Push-ups in the sand, burpees in the tide, boats overheads, voices in ears. You don't belong here. You're wasting space. You're holding the real men back. Jasmine tuned it out. She thought of her mama, staring an empty cup. Her brother, watching her train with tired eyes. Her uncle's old marine jacket. Her father's last words, "Be good, baby girl." She held on to all of it. Day 1 passed. Day 2. Then came the moment. The turning point. They were on the range again. Exhausted. Cold. Starving. 1 shot each, with their dominant hand tied behind them. Instructors watching closely. Jasmine adjusted the rifle, took her breath, and fired. Bullseye. The room paused. The colonel stepped forward, again. Lucky shot. She met his eyes. Want me to do it blindfolded? He laughed. Then the commander stepped into view and said the words that cracked the world open. She already is one of us. The next 30 seconds after the commander spoke were a storm of silent chaos. Every head turned. The colonel's jaw tightened, his hand curling into a fist at his side. Jasmine stood in the middle of it all, her breath shallow, arms limp at her sides. Mud streaked her uniform. Her face was flushed. Her left shoulder throbbed from the last round of log PT. But her eyes stayed locked forward. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't gloat. But inside, she burned. Because it wasn't over. Not even close. The commander didn't wait for a rebuttal. He turned and left with the target sheet in hand, folding it under his arm like a classified document. Lane gave Jasmine a single nod, more of a warning than praise. Stay sharp. The colonel didn't say a word. But as he passed her, his shoulder brushed hers a little too hard to be accidental. And just like that, the moment passed. That night, back in the barracks, she peeled off her boots with aching fingers. Her body buzzed with exhaustion. The air was sour with sweat, salt, and damp socks. No one spoke to her. They hadn't for weeks. The silence was loud. It was always loud. Jasmine sat on the edge of her bunk and slowly rolled the stiffness out of her neck. A scrape on her shin stung. A raw patch on her back from carrying the Zodiac boat pulsed every time her shirt brushed it. Her fingernails were cracked. Her hands were raw. She liked it. She needed it. Pain was the only thing they couldn't fake, couldn't manipulate, couldn't twist into a rumor or snide remark behind her back. Pain was real. The guys kept their distance now, not just because of the incident on the range, but because she was making it. Every day she survived, the unspoken question grew louder in the room. What if she finishes? What if she makes it all the way? What if she's better? That kind of doubt eats a man alive, especially men who have spent their whole lives being the strongest in the room. And Jasmine, she was just getting started. On day 3 of Hell Week, everything broke. It wasn't a single moment. It was a slow, quiet collapse that started when they were dragged out to the water again, in the dead of night. The wind had picked up. Cold bit at exposed skin like claws. They were told to link arms and lay in the surf, heads toward the ocean, backs against the pull of the tide. Jasmine felt the water seep into her ears, her nose, her soul. Instructors shouted over the wind. You want to quit? Now's the time. Get out, get dry, get coffee. Ring the bell. All you got to do is quit. A candidate 2 bodies over unlinked. Stood, walked out. No one spoke. Then another. Then another. The surf dragged Jasmine sideways, salt burning her lips. And then, the colonel walked down the line. Boots in the water. He stopped at her head. You think this matters, Reynolds? You think one good shooting record makes you Navy SEAL material? She didn't answer. He crouched, his voice barely above the tide. You're not one of them. You never will be. Still, she didn't speak. Quit now. Save yourself the humiliation. Everyone's waiting for you to break. Her jaw clenched. She didn't say it out loud, but her mind screamed it. Let them wait. He stood, moved on. She stayed in that water for another hour, maybe more. Time lost meaning. When they were finally pulled up and ordered back to shore, Jasmine could barely feel her legs. Her face was numb, but she was still walking. That night, there were only 6 candidates left. Sleep deprivation does strange things. By day 4, Jasmine began to hallucinate. At first, it was small things. A rabbit in the corner of her vision that wasn't there. A whisper that sounded like her mama's voice. Then it got worse. She saw Marcus, standing beside the obstacle course, arms folded. "You're tired, Jazz," he said. "Go home." She blinked. He vanished. She shook her head, kept running. She threw up behind the barracks during the 10-minute meal break they got. Then she rinsed her mouth, wiped her face, and went back to PT. The others were wrecked. One guy cried during a rope climb. Another kept muttering, "I'm not here. I'm not here." She wasn't doing much better, but she kept going, because something had shifted. The instructors weren't pushing her as hard anymore. They were watching her, like they were waiting for something. And she started to realize, if she didn't break, she might finish this. That night, she sat by the fire they were allowed to huddle around for 10 minutes. Her hands trembled. Her lips split open when she bit it too hard, trying to stay awake. And that's when Lane appeared. He didn't sit, just stood behind her. "You're past the point of no return," he said. She looked up, blinking slowly. "Then I guess I'll just keep going." He nodded. "You'll need to be ready for what comes after. You think they hate you now?" She didn't answer. "You think they'll be okay letting you walk out of this as SEAL? After you broke records? After you made that old man look like a damn fool?" Still, no answer. "You're not walking away clean, Reynolds. I hope you know that." She looked at the fire, eyes dry and hollow. "I'm not here to walk away clean." And then the bell rang. Not that bell. Not the one you ring when you quit. This one meant the final evolution was starting. They called it the grinder. A test of endurance, strength, precision, speed. No sleep. No breaks. Just 12 hours of hell. And the winner? The one who finished first. Would skip the final 2 days of Hell Week and ain't a direct recommendation from the commander. No one ever skipped the final 2 days. But no one ever shot like she did either. And they all knew it. So when they lined up at midnight, and the lights went on, and the instructors barked the rules, Jasmine looked around at the 5 men beside her, and none of them looked her in the eye, because they were afraid now. Not that she was still standing, but that she might win. And if she did, there'd be no more denying her place. The whistle blew. They launched forward, and Jasmine ran like hell. It felt like her lungs were ripping open by the time Jasmine hit the 5th obstacle. The grinder wasn't just a test. It was a war of attrition. A 12-hour, full-body, full-mind assault. Obstacle courses. Deadweight carries. Live-fire accuracy drills. Combat simulations. Navigation. Underwater breath holds. Sprint repeats. Rope climbs. All stacked one after the other in relentless succession. No breaks. No water except what you could steal between stations. No room for hesitation. It was built to crush even the most seasoned candidates. It was built so no one could win. But Jasmine wasn't there to play fair. She wasn't just competing with the 5 men still standing. She was running against history. Against every recruiter who told her to try the Air Force instead. Against every locker room smack. Against every time the Colonel's voice dripped with a word girl like it was dirty. And against that voice in her own head that sometimes whispered, "You don't belong here either." She couldn't outrun the pain anymore. Her legs were 2 rods of fire, and her lungs wheezed with every breath. But she could outrun that voice. So she did. At hour 3, they hit the log carry. Each candidate was given a 120-pound beam. 4 laps around the perimeter of the training yard. Jasmine dropped to her knees when she first lifted it. Not because it was too heavy, because her back was already shot. Her shoulders screamed from the previous stations. She got up anyway. Second lap, the log slipped and cracked her across the collarbone. She went down, face first in the dirt. The instructor leaned over. "You done?" She growled, actually growled, and shoved the log back onto her shoulders. The others had passed her by then, but she didn't quit. Fourth lap, she crossed the line and dropped the log with a grunt. One of the instructors gave her a slow nod. That felt better than a medal. At hour 6, the colonel returned. She'd gone most of the day without seeing him, and some foolish part of her had started to believe she'd finally scared him off. But there he was, leaning against the barrier at the live fire simulation range, arms crossed, hat low over his eyes. She took her position. 10 targets. 1 rifle. 15 seconds. Breathing hard. Sweat in her eyes. Arms shaking from fatigue. The whistle blew. She aimed and fired, every shot instinctive, drawn from a place deeper than practice. The last round hit with a ping right before the buzzer. The range officer walked out, marked the targets, and returned. 8 hits. 2 near misses. Jasmine clenched her jaw. It wasn't good enough. But then the colonel said, too loud for comfort, better than half the men last year. She looked up sharply. He was still smirking, but something behind his eyes had shifted. He wasn't mocking her. He was measuring her, and he didn't like what he saw. That made her stand up straighter. At hour 9, she began to hallucinate again. This time, it wasn't a voice or flicker of someone from home. It was herself. She saw herself standing beside the rope climb, stronger, cleaner, not shaking or dirty or bleeding. This version of her looked calm, unbothered, finished. Jasmine blinked it away. Then she stepped to the rope, wrapped it around her raw hands, and climbed. When she reached the top, she didn't even remember how she got there. At hour 10, only 3 candidates remained. The others had dropped. One twisted an ankle, one vomited uncontrollably, one simply walked off the field and collapsed in the grass. Jasmine didn't see them fall. She was in a tunnel now, a red, hot, burning tunnel where all that existed was forward. Forward, forward, forward. She kept moving through sheer spite. And then it was hour 11. One final station. Underwater breath hold while navigating a submerged maze. Jasmine could barely stand. Her whole body shook. She waded into the tank like a ghost, dropped below the surface, and held onto the breath like it was her last. The darkness wrapped around her. She moved through the tunnel, eyes open, water pressing into her skull like a vice. Her heart pounded. She hit the first wall, turned left, then down, then around. Every fiber of her screamed, "Breathe. Breathe now. You can't do it." She counted. 1,000. 2, 1,000. 3. She made it halfway through before panic gripped her. The cold tightened around her chest. Her vision blurred. Her limbs stopped responding. For a split second, she thought of giving up, of pushing to the surface. Just breathe. Then she saw her father's face, clearer than she ever had in years. He wasn't saying anything, just looking at her. And somehow, that gave her one more second. Then 2. Then 5. She pushed forward, broke the surface on the far end, sucked in air so hard she coughed blood. But she was done, finished. And when she climbed out of the water, she saw the last 2 guys still on the other side, struggling. She had won. She didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She collapsed in the mud and stayed at the sky. And then the colonel's boots appeared again. She blinked up at him, too tired to care. "You think this changes anything?" He asked it like a joke. She sat up, slowly, her body screaming. "No," she said, "but now everyone else knows." Then she stood, barely, but she stood, and walked off the course without another word. The next day, the commander pulled her aside. "You're getting your recommendation," he said. "Direct route to final selection." Jasmine nodded, too exhausted to speak. He hesitated, then added, "You made enemies here." She already knew, but you also made history. She didn't say thank you. She just said, "Good," then walked away. She found Marcus's text waiting on her phone that night. "Still breathing?" She replied, "Barely, but I won." The moment Jasmine stepped off the plane in Coronado, California, the air tasted different. Saltier, sharper, like the Pacific wasn't sure what to make of her. She had 3 days to recover before official SEAL selection began. Real selection. Not prep, not tryouts. The pipeline. The last gate. The one almost no one got through. The few who made it weren't just elite athletes or expert marksmen. They were monsters of grit. Ghosts who could vanish behind enemy lines, kill with silence, carry wounded teammates across deserts, dive blind in zero-visibility water, and still recite coordinates under fire. And they almost never looked like her. The temporary barracks at Naval Amphibious Base were different. Smaller, more clinical, and cold, chilled by steel walls and sharp glaze. There were 12 remaining candidates in this phase. All men, all white. Most had military pedigrees. 2 were legacies, sons of SEALs. The room went still when she entered. No one spoke. But one guy near the bunk window, crew cut, square jaw, tall, whistled low. Lost, sweetheart. She dropped her duffel on the lower bunk across from him and looked him in the eye. Yeah, she said flatly. Looking for the room where you don't talk. They got a quiet snort from a guy at the far end of the room. Then silence again. She knew that silence. It was the same kind she'd heard her whole life. Not fear, not confusion, resentment. They hated that she'd made it this far. Because if she belonged here, then maybe they didn't. Day 1 of SEAL qualification training started at 0430 with a conditioning run across the beach. 7 miles. Soft sand. Weighted packs. She was third to finish. No one spoke to her at breakfast. Not until Petty Officer Brooks came over. He was lean, scarred, his neck permanently tanned by years of sun. He tapped her tray with his clipboard. Reynolds, you're shooting this afternoon. Evaluation round. Long range, high wind, rotating targets. She nodded. Your reputation made it here before you did. She said nothing. He looked down at her tray, frowned. Eat more. You're going to need it. Then he walked off. Crew cut watched from 2 tables away, his jaw tight. The shooting range was perched on a cliffside overlooking the Pacific. Wind cut across the lanes like a blade. The setup was built to mess with even the most disciplined shooters. Unpredictable gusts, backlit targets, shifting distances. They handed her a suppressed MK-11 sniper system. One of the instructors smirked. You break another record today. You'll have to buy us all drinks. She didn't laugh, didn't even blink, just laid prone, adjusted her scope, and steadied her breath. 20 shots, 10 targets, moving, spinning, angled. Her hands didn't shake. The world narrowed to crosshays and breath. She squeezed. Crack. Then again. Crack. Over and over. Her body became the rifle. No wasted movement. No second guesses. When the last shot rang out, the instructors were already walking toward the target line. She sat up slowly, brushing grit from her face. Brooks returned 10 minutes later. 17 hits. 3 peripheral tags. He didn't say it, but his eyes told her. That was top tier. He didn't leave. You know the colonel's still on base, right? He asked quietly. Jasmine looked up. Didn't know. Don't care. Brooks studied her for a beat. He's not a man who forgets. Especially not when he's embarrassed. She stewed, slung the rifle over her shoulder. Then he shouldn't have laughed. That night, while the others cleaned gear or sprawled in bunks, she stayed behind in the gym. Pull-ups, deadlifts, cool work until her muscles threatened to mutiny. Crew cut walking halfway through. He leaned on the door frame, arms crossed. You trying to impress someone? He asked. Nope. He stepped forward. You think beating a bunch of SCAD prep guys means anything? She dropped the barbell. No, but beating you would. He blinked. She grabbed the rope and started climbing. Didn't look down once. Day 4 brought dive testing. They were transported to a deep water training pool on base. 50 feet. Black as oil. 0 light after 10 feet. The task? A full gear assembly underwater. No air. No partner. 1 attempt. She was the only candidate not from a Navy background. The only one who hadn't done dive school before this. The instructors knew that. The colonel did too. He showed up again. Jasmine stood on the edge of the pool in full gear when she saw him. Hand behind his back, watching her the way a sniper watches a target. She didn't react. Just jumped. The water swallowed her whole. She hit the bottom fast, lungs already screaming. Her fingers fumbled with the pack, pressure warping her coordination. The straps tangled. Her left glove floated off. She dropped the oxygen rig and had to turn in near darkness to find it. She heard a voice in her head. You don't belong here. They'll never let you finish. She ignored it, pulled the mask into place, locked the straps, hit the ascent line just as her body began to spasm. She broke the surface in silence. The instructor gave a curt nod. She passed. Only 9 of the 12 did. That night, Brooks handed her an envelope. From high up, he said. Inside was a note. No signature. Just 5 words. You're too loud. Quit now. She didn't react. Just folded it. Tossed it in the trash. Crew cut watched her do it. You think you're making a point, he said, arms crossed. I'm making a future. He stepped closer. We all had to work to be here. You didn't get here by being better. You got here by being the only one. She stepped forward too, close enough to see the twitch in his jaw. I earned every mile, every breath, every shot. You don't like it? Then beat me. His eyes burned. Don't tempt me. I'm not tempting. I'm waiting. She walked off. He didn't follow. At the end of week 1, the candidates were ranked. Jasmine came in second. Crew cut, whose real name was Daniels, came in third. He didn't take it well. Not at all. So when they were paired together for the next challenge, wilderness evasion and capture tactics, she knew things were going to go sideways. They were dropped into the desert at night. 2 canteens. 1 compass. No GPS. No comms. Find extraction. Avoid detection. Work as a unit. Daniels didn't speak to her for the first hour. At the 2-hour mark, he muttered, You've got the map. She passed it to him. He studied it, then changed course without consulting her. They hiked 5 miles before realizing he was leading them the wrong way. She didn't say I told you so. He snapped anyway. You think you're better than me. She looked at him, calm and cold. I don't think. I know. He lunged, grabbed her by the front of her vest and shoved. Hard. She hit the date. Rolled. Came up fast, stance wide, hands up. You want to fight me, she said, low and steady. Right now. His eyes were wild, breathing ragged. Then he stepped back. They stared at each other for a long beat. Then he turned and kept walking. She didn't trust him, but she kept going too, because the only way out was forward. Jasmine didn't sleep that night. Not because of the heat, though the desert air stayed warm even at midnight, or the hunger chewing at her stomach. Not even because she was lying on packed sand next to a man who tried to fight her 5 hours earlier. She didn't sleep because she couldn't afford to. Daniels was inches away, breathing slow, pretending to rest. She kept one eye open, hand on her knife, not for drama or paranoia, but because this man wanted her gone. And out here, in the dark, with no one watching, she was on her own. Again, just like always. By sunrise, they were still 20 miles from the extraction point, and Daniel still hadn't said a word. Jasmine gathered her gear, checked her compass, and started walking. You don't even want to talk about last night, she asked, not looking at him. He didn't answer. Fine, she muttered. 10 minutes later, they hit a ridge overlooking a valley. On the far side, the extraction flag, flapping faintly in the breeze beside a small comms tower. Between them and the tower were 24 mock hostiles, SEAL instructors in camo with paintball rifles and nothing better to do than make people miserable. Getting spotted meant a forced reset and 3 hours lost. Jasmine crouched behind a rock, watching their movement. Daniels knelt beside her. I'll draw them left, he said finally. You loop around. Hit the tower from the east. She hesitated. You sure? He looked at her, jaw tight. I don't need to like you to finish this. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't a threat either. That was enough. Give me 30 seconds before you move, she said. He nodded once, then sprinted down the slope, drawing fire, zigzagging behind brush and debris. The paintballs started flying, cracking against rocks and dirt. Instructors shouted, trying to flank him. Jasmine took off the other way, low to the ground, barely breathing. She moved fast, Clean. Slipped through gaps like water. By the time they realized she was flanking them, she was 20 feet from the tower. She sprinted the last stretch, ducked under the barrier, and slapped the flag. Extraction secured. Daniels limped in 5 minutes later, bruised and covered in red paint. You got it? He asked, panting. She nodded. He dropped to one knee, laughing between breaths. Damn, you're good. Jasmine looked at him. Not smug. Just steady. Yeah, I know. Back at base, they debriefed. Instructors gave her top marks. Stealth, tactics, timing, coordination. Daniels didn't speak during the review. Later, as they walked out of the room, he caught up with her. I hated you, he said bluntly. Still kinda do. She didn't flinch. Cool. But I respect you now. She stopped walking. He looked at her. That mattered to you. She thought about it, then said, not really. He cracked a smile. Good. They walked on in silence. The next week ramped everything up. More tests. More nights without sleep. More challenges designed to break even the strongest candidates. A night infiltration dive in freezing water left one man coughing blood. A combat scenario in a warehouse turned into a real brawl when two guys couldn't agree on strategy. One was pulled from the program after throwing a punch that left another unconscious. By the end of the week, only 6 remained. Jasmine was still one of them. The instructors weren't ignoring her anymore. They were watching. The commander started showing up at more events. Not speaking. Just there. Lane returned too. He met her outside the mess hall one evening, nodding as they walked together toward the obstacle course. You're about to cross a line, he said. What kind? The kind that makes people nervous. She glanced at him. Why? Because you're becoming undeniable. And nobody likes that. They stopped by the monkey bars, where some guys were training in the dark. Whatever you do, Lane added, don't let them bait you. She nodded, but it was already too late. That weekend, a message appeared in Jasmine's locker. No envelope this time. Just a single sheet of paper. We're not letting you wear that trident, even if we have to make it ugly. No name. No handwriting. Just plain block print. She showed it to no one. Not even Lane. But that night, someone poured bleach in her boots. And 2 days later, her dive gear was found slashed. Brooks pulled her aside quietly. You want to file a complaint? He asked. No. You sure? They want me to flinch, she said. I won't. He nodded slowly, concern in his eyes. You've got a target on you, Reynolds. Might get worse before it gets better. Let them come, she said. Then came the incident. It was supposed to be a team navigation challenge, nothing unusual. Just 6 candidates, grouped in pairs, dropped into the mountains with maps and coordinates. Jasmine was partnered with a quiet guy named Rains. Former Army. Fast. Smart. They worked well together. Climbed fast. Navigated better. Then, somewhere around checkpoint 3, Rains disappeared. 1 second he was walking ahead of her, 20 feet up the trail. The next second, gone. No sound. No warning. Just gone. Jasmine sprinted forward, then saw the drop. The trail had collapsed, years of erosion finally giving way under his weight. He'd fallen 15 feet into a dry riverbed full of jagged rock. She scrambled down. He was conscious, barely. His leg was twisted badly, blood on his forehead. She touched his shoulder. Can you hear me? He groaned. Yeah, leg's gone. It's done. She checked his radio. Dead. She checked hers. Dead too. Some kind of jammer. No signal. No contact. No rescue. And 6 miles from base. It would have been easy to leave him. He told her to. Go, he gasped. Clock's ticking. Save yourself. She looked at him, then pulled her belt off and strapped it tight around his thigh. No. She hauled him onto her back. 1 mile in, she fell. Ripped her elbow open on a rock. 2 miles in, her knees buckled. He kept telling her to quit. To leave him. To just make it back and send help. But she didn't. 3 miles in, she started hallucinating again. Saw the colonel's face in the trees. He was laughing. She kept walking. 4 miles. 5. At mile 6, they broke the tree line. She collapsed on the gravel outside the base gate. A medic saw them and sprinted over, screaming for a stretcher. As they loaded Rains into the truck, he grabbed her arm. "I was wrong," he said. "You do belong here." She didn't respond. Couldn't. She passed out on the pavement. She woke up in the medical bay with Lane sitting beside her, arms crossed. "You're lucky you didn't break your spine," he said. She tried to sit up. Winced. "You're grounded for a week," he added. "No training." She looked at him. "No. Reynolds. No." She forced herself upright. "I'm not stopping. Not now." Lane watched her, then smiled. "You sound like a SEAL." And for the first time since this began, she smiled too. Jasmine limped into the chow hall the next morning, stitches in her elbow, a compression brace on her knee, and a backpack full of books she didn't need. She wasn't going to class. She wasn't even supposed to be walking without crutches. But SEAL training didn't stop for healing, and she knew better than to slow down. The moment she crossed the threshold, every head turned. Conversations quieted. Forks hovered above trays. She saw the looks. Confused. Curious. A few guilty. She also saw Daniels, leaned back, arms folded, watching her with unreadable eyes. He raised a single eyebrow. "You die." "Nope," she said, grabbing a tray. "Just carried a grown man 6 miles through the woods for fun." Someone at the far table chuckled under his breath. Daniels shook his head. "You're insane." "No," she said, sitting. "I'm here." Rains was still in the medical ward, leg in a full brace, ribs taped up, face half-bandaged. But he was alive. And more importantly, he was talking. Word spread fast. Reynolds carried him through the hills. Didn't leave him. Didn't call for backup. Didn't quit. SEAL instructors respected that more than they ever said out loud. And it changed things. Slightly. The silence in the hallways softened. A couple of the guys nodded when they passed. One handed her a spare protein bar after swim drills. They weren't friends, but they weren't enemies anymore. Even Daniel started running drills with her in the evenings. They didn't talk, but they moved like they'd trained together for years. That mattered, because selection was nearing its final phase, the gauntlet. It was a 3-day, full-spectrum simulation. Combat, rescue, intel, navigation, interrogation resistance, live-fire stress drills, mental breakdown testing, and a 40-mile trek with nothing but a compass and what you could carry. Those who made it through the gauntlet earned the right to be reviewed by the SEAL Qualification Authority. Those who didn't, they washed out. Quietly. Permanently. The briefing room was full of tension when Brooks walked in and pinned a map to the board. "You'll be dropped into the Santa Ana Mountains. No GPS. No phones. You'll move through 4 checkpoints in order. At each one, you'll be given a task. Complete it. Move on. There will be actors playing combatants. Live ammo. Some of you will be caught. Some of you will fail." He turned to face them. "You'll be graded on mission success, leadership, and whether your team makes it out in one piece." Jasmine raised her hand. Brooks nodded. "Who assigns teams?" "I do." He didn't elaborate. Later that day, the list went up. Reynolds, Daniels, Gibson, Miller, 4-person squad. 3 solid candidates. 1 unknown. And Jasmine. She met Daniel's eyes across the room. He gave a small shrug. She didn't react. But inside, she braced herself. Because she knew what this was. They weren't giving her a stacked team. They were giving her a test. And someone was still pulling strings. They were inserted by Chopper the next morning at 0500. The wind whipped her hair back as she jumped. Her boots hit dirt hard. The mountain air was cold and dry. She scanned the perimeter. Daniels was already securing the southern edge. Miller was checking ammo. Gibson was standing still. Too still. He was the unknown, new to the training group. Quiet. Older. Something about him felt off. But no time for questions. Checkpoint 1 was 5 miles northeast. She led them out. The first leg was quiet. Steady movement. Minimal chatter. Jasmine mapped the terrain, adjusting pace and formation as the light shifted. They reached a shack built into the hillside by noon. A red flag fluttered from a metal pole. Checkpoint 1. Inside was a dummy. Injured, legs crushed, face painted with fake blood. Brooks' voice came through the portable speaker. "Scenario. Downed civilian in enemy territory. Evacuate without detection. Gibson cursed under his breath. He weighs a damn ton. Welcome to my world, Jasmine muttered. They rigged a carry using 2 rifles and a poncho. Jasmine took the front, Daniels the rear. Miller stayed on lookout. Gibson dragged his feet. They got halfway down the ridge before the first paintball cracked past her shoulder. Ambush. They hit the date. Jasmine rolled behind a tree, yanked up her rifle, and returned fire, targeting movement rather than shapes. Daniels flanked left. Miller got clipped in the arm, tagged out. Gibson froze. Cover, she shouted. He didn't move. She had to crawl across 20 feet of loose gravel and drag him down behind a boulder. Are you trying to fail us? She snapped. I didn't sign up to follow you, he muttered. Her blood boiled, but she didn't answer, just pushed past him and resumed fire. 10 minutes later, the enemies pulled back. She pulled Miller's simulated body the rest of the way to the evac point with Daniel's help. Checkpoint cleared, but Gibson didn't speak the rest of the day. Checkpoint 2 was worse. They had to cross a ravine on a rotted rope bridge. No safety line, no backup. Daniels crossed first, slow and steady. Jasmine followed. Halfway across, the ropes shifted. She froze, balancing on worn planks. The wind howled. Then she heard a snap. The bridge tilted hard. She fell. Only her fingers caught the bottom rope. She dangled over a 40-foot drop, pack swaying, blood rushing in her ears. Reynolds! Daniels shouted. She tried to pull herself up. The rope burned her palms raw. Old! But then Gibson was there. He looked down at her, expression flat, and let go of her rope. Just a little bit. Enough to send her swinging. She caught another line. Barely. Climbed up. Rolled over the edge, panting. Daniels helped her stand. Did he? Yeah, she said, voice hard. He did. Gibson walked off ahead. Daniels stayed after him. You reported. She shook her head. Not yet. Because if she reported him now, they'd pull her from the gauntlet. No review. No seal pin. And Gibson would win. She wasn't giving him that. Not now. Not ever. Jasmine woke to rain pounding her face. They'd camped in a shallow rock basin outside Checkpoint 3. The weather turned at midnight. Cold, biting sheets of rain poured down the mountainside, soaking everything. Her fingers were numb. Her gear was heavy with water. Daniels was already awake, tending a fire that wouldn't light. Gibson sat a few feet away, chewing dry rations like nothing had happened. She hadn't said a word about the rope incident yet, but every second she looked at him, her fists itched. Miller was still out, disqualified after the ambush at Checkpoint 1. It was just the 3 of them now. Gibson had tried to kill her. Daniels hadn't seen enough to back her. And Jasmine? She had to finish this gauntlet to earn her review, to get the trident. They needed her to quit, and they were getting real desperate. Checkpoint 3 was a cave system. Tight tunnels, zero light, fake captors waiting in ambush. They were told it would test their ability to withstand psychological stress. You'll be interrogated, Brooks said over comms. You'll be split up. You'll be cold, isolated, and disoriented. Hold your ground. They were blindfolded at the entrance and led inside by instructors. Zip-tied. No light. No warning. Then the yelling started. Jasmine was thrown against a wall. A voice screamed in her ear. You think they'll come for you? You think anyone cares if you disappear? You're just a token. A checkbox. She kept her breathing even. Controlled. They dunk her in cold water. Slammed her against the floor. Pounded metal to simulate gunfire. Another voice. You're not wanted. They just want to see you fail. The colonel was right. That one almost cracked her. Almost. But then she pictured her brother again. Marcus, standing barefoot in the kitchen back in Montgomery, pointing at her plane ticket to Illinois and saying, You're going to scare the hell out of them. Promise me that. She held on to that. Tighter than air. Tighter than her name. They left her in silence for what felt like an hour, then pulled her blindfold off. Daniels was sitting across from her in another chair, bleeding from a split lip. Still breathing? She asked. Barely. Then Gibson entered the room with 2 instructors. He looked untouched, perfectly calm. Something twisted in her gut. She knew. He talked, not just about the exercise, about her. Maybe not by name, not directly, but enough. Enough to plant doubt. Enough to make sure she'd never make it past the review board. She stared at him. He stayed back, unblinking, then smirked. A slow, smug smirk that said, "You're done." And for the first time in this entire brutal journey, Jasmine cracked. Not in tears, not in screams. In clarity. She smiled. Because he made one mistake. He thought this would end her. He still didn't understand who she was. And he was about to find out. They finished the interrogation phase 6 hours later. All 3 candidates were cleared. No one was pulled. No one quit. But when they reached checkpoint 4, a small cabin with emergency med supplies and a map for the final 40-mile trek, Jasmine pulled Brooks aside. "I need to report something." He listened. Face blank. Arms crossed. She didn't cry. Didn't beg. She gave him times. Locations. Descriptions. Everything. Brooks didn't respond at first. Then he nodded. "Finish the gauntlet. We'll take it from there." She didn't ask if she'd be punished for waiting. She didn't ask if it would matter. She just picked up a pack and walked outside. The last march began at dusk. 40 miles. Uphill, downhill, through brush and open desert. Daniels kept her pace. They moved in silence for hours. At some point, just before sunrise, he finally said, "I believe you." She didn't stop walking. "I know. He's not gonna make it through this," Daniels added. "He doesn't deserve to." Daniels glanced at her. "You do." She didn't respond. Just kept walking. One foot, then the other. When they arrived at the extraction zone 20 hours later, Brooks was waiting. So was the commander. And the colonel. She almost laughed when she saw him. He didn't speak. Just stared at her like a ghost had walked out of the date. Brooks motioned her over. "Instructors confirmed sabotage on your equipment. Dive gear. Boots. Map error in Phase 2 was deliberate." She nodded, jaw clenched. "Gibson. Disqualified. Under investigation." Her knees almost buckled, but she didn't show it. Then the commander stepped forward. "You're done," he said. It took her a second to process that. "Done? Done with what?" "Your file goes to the Trident Review Board tomorrow. You've cleared every phase. Scored in the top 3 of every event." She swallowed hard. "Am I getting it?" He didn't smile. Didn't answer. Just handed her a sealed folder. "Be in uniform tomorrow at 0600. Trident ceremony. Or don't show. Your choice." She took the folder, hands trembling. He added, voice low, "You didn't just survive. You led. That's what matters." Then he walked away. That night, she stood alone at the edge of the beach. Waves crashed at her boots. Wind tore at her face. She took the letter out of the folder. It was short. Official. Approved. Jasmine A. Reynolds. Qualified candidate. Naval Special Warfare. Trident awarded. Effective immediately. She stared at it for a long time. Then folded it. Put it back. And whispered to the ocean, "You hear that, Colonel?" Behind her, a voice said, "He hears it." "Daniels." He stepped beside her. "You think he'll ever admit it?" Jasmine shrugged. "He doesn't have to." Then she smiled. "Everyone else already knows." Jasmine stood in front of the mirror in her dress uniform, palms flat on the cold metal sink. The collar was stiff. The fabric hugged every sore muscle like a second skin. Her chest ached with a dozen injuries that hadn't fully healed. Her mind was a quiet war zone. Flashes of rope burns, broken ribs, cold water, pain, yelling. And now this. The moment that wasn't supposed to come. The ceremony. It wasn't graduation. It wasn't a parade. It was private. Tight. Raw. No parents. No speeches. Just the team. The brass. And the pin. The trident. The symbol worn by Navy SEALs on their left chest. Eagle, anchor, trident, and pistol. A badge you earned in blood and never received lightly. She took a breath, let it out slow, and stepped into the hallway. The ceremony was held in a small hangar on base, lit only by morning sun breaking through open doors. Rows of folding chairs sat on concrete flooring, lined with shadows and quiet anticipation. There were 6 of them now. 6 who'd made it. each standing in front of a small podium, heads held high, backs straight. Jasmine was the last one called forward. The room stayed silent as she walked. She didn't hear boots, didn't hear birds, just breath and heart, and the faint pounding of a million no's behind her. The commander stood at the front. Beside him, Brooks held a black velvet box. Inside, nestled on dark cloth, was a trident. Brooks opened it, stepped forward, and looked her dead in the eye. "Reynolds," he said, "you didn't ask for this ceremony. You earned it." She nodded, throat too tight to speak. He held the pin above her chest. "Normally we say a few words, a line or two about teamwork, brotherhood, tradition." He paused. "Today, I don't need to say anything." And then, he punched the pin into her chest, straight through the fabric. Hard. Tradition. It hurt like hell. But Jasmine never flinched. She didn't even blink. Brooks stepped back, and the room, still silent, broke into the quietest, most solemn round of applause she'd ever heard. She stepped back into formation, blinking once, her face still and unreadable. But inside her, something uncoiled. A breath she'd been holding for years finally let go. Afterward, the team gathered behind the hangar. Some laughed. Some shook hands. Daniel slapped her on the back so hard she winced. "You made it," he said. "Still here," she replied. Brooks came up behind them with 2 waters and handed her one. "Your name's going up on the wall," he said. "The shooting range. They are putting your scores in the permanent ledger." She blinked. "That real?" "Already happened." He nodded toward the facility on the hill. "Colonel retired yesterday." Jasmine turned. "Voluntarily?" Brooks raised an eyebrow. "As voluntarily as you can when the commander hands you paperwork and says, 'Your time's up.'" She didn't smile, didn't laugh, just sipped her water. "Good." That night, she FaceTimed Marcus from the barracks. He answered on the second ring, bleary-eyed, t-shirt twisted, half asleep. He squinted. "Jazz." She held up the pin. He blinked. Then his mouth dropped open. "No way. Way." She didn't mean to cry, but she did. He did too. They sat like that, silent tears, dumb grins, no words, for a long time. When he finally spoke, it was just one line. Dad would have lost his mind. She laughed, wiping her face. "I know. You tell Mom." "Not yet. I wanted to tell you first." He grinned. "How's it feel?" She paused, then said quietly, "Like I'm finally home." The next week was calm, deceptively calm, the kind that felt more like the eye of a storm than peace. They called it integration time, days spent meeting with intel officers, instructors, logistics teams, prepping for what came next, assignment to an active SEAL platoon. Jasmine tried to enjoy it, but she noticed the shift. Guys looked longer, spoke less, smiled tighter. One morning, she walked into the weight room and found her picture taped to the wall, right below a copy of her shooting scores. Someone had drawn a cartoon crown above her head. Someone else had written, "Not a SEAL, just a trophy." She stood there, reading it, then tore it down, threw it away, said nothing, but her chest buzzed with rage. They still weren't done, even with the trident in hand. Even now, her first assignment came by sealed envelope. Team 4, deployment ready, Middle East, 4 weeks. She folded the orders, then walked to the range, taped a fresh target to the board. 200 yards. No spotter, no wind flags. She laid prone, adjusted her rifle, took one breath, and emptied the clip. Every round struck the center. Dead on. Lane appeared behind her, hands in his pockets, still trying to prove something. "No," she said, standing. "Then what?" "Reminding myself." He nodded, then looked her dead in the eye. "You ready for what's coming?" She should have said no. Should have admitted she was scared. Because she was. This wasn't training anymore. This was war. But instead, she met his gaze and said, "I've been ready my whole life." Dust and heat swallowed the airstrip the second Jasmine stepped off the C-130 transport plane. The sand clawed at her eyes. The sun beat down like a judgment. Her boots sank a half-inch into cracked dirt as she followed the rest of SEAL Team 4 toward the convoy of armored Hums waiting outside the hangar. "Welcome to hell," Someone muttered behind her. No one introduced her. No one offered a handshake. She was just a new name, a new body, a new question mark in a team that had already buried too many. Jasmine didn't expect a warm welcome. She didn't want one. But she noticed it, how their eyes flicked toward her, then away. Quick, skeptical, like they were trying not to see what they already knew. She doesn't look like any SEAL we've had before. Their base was a fortress of sandbags and steel. High concrete walls, guard towers, watchdogs. Inside, tents, a mess hall, a gym, a war room. They called it Outpost Bravo. No frills, no breaks, no patience. Lieutenant Harper, the unit commander, gave Jasmine 5 minutes of his time. You trained with Brooks. She nodded. Yes, sir. Your scores check out. Your rep checks out. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked her in the eye. But don't expect that to mean anything out here. I don't. He raised an eyebrow. Good. Then he handed her a binder full of maps, target intel, and mission briefs. You're running Shadow Recon with Blue Team. You leave at 0200. Gear up. Don't slow them down. And don't make me regret signing that form. She flipped open the binder, eyes scanning coordinates and satellite images. Understood. She didn't ask for backup, didn't ask for help, and she didn't sleep that night. The mission was simple on paper. Intel had flagged a weapons transfer outside a small village near the Syrian border. Night operation. Light resistance expected. No engagement unless fired upon. Just eyes and ears. Jasmine rode in the second Humvee with 2 others. Ortiz, the sniper, and Shaw, the comms guy. Neither spoke for the first hour. Then Ortiz turned to her and said, You get cold feet, we leave you. No hard feelings. She didn't look at him. Fair. You get slow, I leave you. He grinned, sharp and mean. Spicy. They didn't speak again after that. The village was a ghost town by the time they arrived. No lights, no movement, just walls of clay and crumbling wood. Blue Team split up. Jasmine was paired with Shaw, sent to circle the east perimeter and monitor activity from a rooftop vantage point. She moved clean, fast, silent. When they reached the building, Shaw motioned her up the ladder. She climbed without hesitation. The rooftop was flat, cracked by years of sun. She dropped into prone position behind a crumbled wall and raised her scope. 3 trucks, 1 building, no movement. Then, in her ear, a whisper, movement. Inside, copy. She clicked once. Copy. A minute passed. 2. Then, gunfire. Sudden, sharp, close. Shaw flinched. Jasmine rolled to the edge of the roof and saw 2 of their guys pinned behind a wall. Ambush. Her first. She didn't freeze. She locked in. Scope up. Fingers steady. Breath calm. Crack. 1 down. Crack. 2. She called positions into the MIC, adjusting for wind, distance, timing. 2 behind the blue truck. 1 by the well. Blue Team responded instantly, repositioning under her cover fire. Another round cracked by her head. Splintered concrete exploded beside her. She didn't duck. She didn't blink. She found the shooter and put him down. Silence returned as fast as the fight had started. Then Harper's voice in her ear. Team secure. 4 hostiles down. No friendly casualties. Nice shooting. She clicked once, then lowered her rifle. Shaw stared at her for a long second. You were calm, he said. Was I supposed to panic? He shook his head, amazed. Just didn't expect it. She looked back through the scope. Get used to it. Back at base, Ortiz tossed her a bottle of water and said, I owe you a beer. Or 6. She caught it. I'll take coffee. Daniels, who'd been assigned to another team nearby, found her later. Word spreading, he said. They're saying you saved half the team out there. I didn't. You sure? She looked away. I didn't save anybody. I just did my job. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that's why it worked. That night, she went to the range alone. Lined up targets. 1 for every voice that told her she'd never make it. The colonel, the recruiter, the ones who sent her the threats, who cut her gear, who waited for her to fail. 10 shots, 10 bullseyes. She put the rifle down and stood there in silence. until a voice behind her said, "You know they hate that you're better than them." She turned. Harper. He wasn't smiling, just watching her, calculating. "I don't care what they hate," she said. He nodded. "You're up for rotation to lead scout next month. Say the word. I'll approve it." She blinked. "Already? You earned it." She studied him. "Or you just want to see what happens when the girl in the room starts giving orders?" He didn't flinch. "Maybe." Then he walked away, and Jasmine just stood there, wind in her face, dirt under her boots, rifle cooling beside her. Not smiling, not proud, just ready. Because if they thought the fight ended with a trident on her chest, they hadn't seen anything yet. 2 weeks later, Jasmine found herself crouched in the shadows of a crumbling wall, sweat soaking through her body armor, eyes locked on a flickering window across the street. They'd been tracking a high-value target for days, a bomb maker with ties to insurgent networks, holed up in a compound in the city of Al-Qaryatayn. He was slippery, moved every 12 hours, never used the same safe house twice. But this time, he'd gotten sloppy. Blue Team was running point. Jasmine, now officially lead scout, was out front, 3 hours ahead of the main force with 2 others, Ortiz and a new addition, Petty Officer Riza. The mission: identify the target, mark the extraction route, and report. No engagement unless fired upon. But Jasmine knew how fast no engagement could turn into contact heavy. From her rooftop perch, she had a clean view of the street below. The compound was modest, 3 stories, 1 exit, 2 guards pacing. They were armed, but distracted. Lazy. She adjusted a headset. "Eagle One, I have eyes on the door. No movement from the interior. You copy?" Harper's voice crackled in her ear. "Copy, Raven lead. You go for phase 2. Confirm location of HVT and pull back." Jasmine clicked once. "Roger." She motioned to Ortiz, who was waiting in the alley below. He slipped into position and moved forward, shadow to shadow, eyes scanning every window. Riza stayed at the rear, covering their flank. Everything moved smooth, tight, professional, until it didn't. Ortiz froze mid-step, then turned to look at her, his eyes wide. A kid, maybe 12, ducked out of the compound, barefoot, holding what looked like a bundle of cloth. He dropped it in the alley and ran. Jasmine's stomach dropped. She'd seen it before. She grabbed her radio. "Eagle One, possible IED at rear compound wall. Child courier drop package. Advise. Static." Then, confirmed. "Proceed with caution. Do not engage unless threat is active." Jasmine swore under her breath. They didn't have bomb tech. They didn't have time. She motioned Ortiz back. He shook his head and pointed to the compound's 2nd floor. Movement. A shadow leaned toward the window. She raised her scope, zoomed in. It was him. The target. Confirmed. "Eagle One, I have visual confirmation on target. Requesting drone support and clearance to exfil." Then she heard it. Footsteps pounding hard across the rooftop behind her. She turned, too late. A man tackled her from behind. She hit the rooftop hard, head bouncing off stone, gun sliding out of reach. He was big, fast, trained. But so was she. She twisted under his grip, slammed her elbow into his jaw, rolled free. He grabbed her leg. She kicked him in the throat. He gasped, just enough time for her to draw her sidearm and put 2 rounds in his chest. He slumped over, dead. She lay there for a second, panting. Then, gunfire. Below, screaming. "Ortiz." She crawled to the ledge, saw him pinned behind a dumpster, blood on his thigh. Riza was firing blindly from cover. Guards were everywhere. They'd walked into a setup. She grabbed her rifle, lined up a shot, and dropped one of the guards clean. Then another. Then she sprinted for the stairs. By the time she hit ground level, the alley was a war zone. Dust, bullets, smoke. She slid him behind the dumpster, grabbed Ortiz's vest, and hauled him back by the straps. "I'm fine," he gasped. "Get the intel." "No." We moved together. Riza covered them from the far end. "Routes blocked," he yelled. Jasmine checked the map. There was a sewer tunnel 5 blocks west, marked as a backup route. But they'd have to move fast. She grabbed her radio. Eagle 1, we are compromised. Repeat, compromised. 2 wounded. HVT confirmed. We're heading to Route Bravo. Request extraction. Silence. Then, static. Then nothing. Comm jammed. They were on their own. She carried Ortiz half a block before his leg gave out. Riza caught up, panting. They are regrouping. More coming. Then we move faster. They ducked into an alley, scaled a fence, tore through a courtyard. Jasmine led every step. Every corner she cleared like it was home. Every sound, every shadow, filed into her head. This was what she was made for. They reached the tunnel grate just as another burst of gunfire rang out behind them. Riza pried the grate open. They dropped into darkness and kept running. It took 4 to 5 minutes underground. When they finally surfaced, 5 miles outside the village, a drone spotted them and redirected a Black Hawk for emergency pickup. The team was blooded, but alive, and the intel Riza had managed to snap, photos, timing, coordinates, was gold. A major cell was dismantled 2 days later because of it. Back at base, Jasmine sat in the medical tent beside Ortiz, who was pale but grinning. You dragged me out of another firefight, he said. I'm buying you a truck. She smiled. I can't drive stick. He closed his eyes. I'll teach you. Hopper entered the tent 10 minutes later, folded arms, unreadable. He looked at Jasmine. You disobeyed protocol. She nodded. Yes, sir. You kept 2 men alive, got the intel, and killed the HVT with a sidearm at 20 feet. She stayed quiet. He finally said, We're putting you in for a commendation. She didn't move, just whispered, It's not over. Hopper blinked. No, it's not. Then he added, But you're leading the next op, and walked out. That night, Jasmine stood alone in the motor pool, wind whipping sand through the air. She looked down at the trident on her chest, blood on her sleeves, dirt on her boots. Her hand trembled for the first time in days, and she clenched it into a fist. They hadn't wanted her here. They tried to humiliate her, sabotage her, crush her, but now they had to follow her, because she'd earned it, because she'd won, not in theory, not in politics, but in fire. The desert was quiet, too quiet. Jasmine crouched behind a dune, her rifle trained on a compound half a mile out. Wind whipped grit into her eyes. Her cheek rested against the cool steel of the scope, breath slow, pulse steady. This was it. Her last up before rotating stateside. Her final field assignment for SEAL Team 4. And she was in command. 2 weeks earlier, the brief had come down from command. High-value target. Chemical weapons cache. Heavily fortified desert compound. Confirmation of civilian hostages. Hopper handed Jasmine the folder with a simple instruction. Bring everyone home. Not destroy the compound. Not kill the target. Bring everyone home. She didn't sleep that night. She just stayed at the ceiling, letting the weight settle. They trusted her now. But more than that, they needed her. Because no one else knew the terrain. No one else had proven they could make the hard calls and live with them. No one else had dragged their wounded out of fire and still hit a target dead center. She'd clawed her way through every wall they'd built. Now, she was leading them through the last one. Her team lay in the sand beside her. Daniels, Ortiz, his leg wrapped tight but healed enough to run. Riza, and Cruz, a quiet explosives tech with a temper. They waited on her signal. She tapped the comms. 2 guards. Rear roof. 3rd post is rotating every 7 minutes. Daniels replied, We breach east, or you want to go under? Under, she said. Cruz grinned. Then we blow the wall. No, quiet route. So entrance, 30 meters out. They moved like shadows. Jasmine led every step. Inside, the corridors stank of fuel and rot. They cleared rooms one by one. 2 guards taken silently. They reached the lower level, bare bulbs swinging above stained concrete. Behind the steel door at the end of the hall, the hostages. 10 civilians. 3 children. Jasmine signaled to Ortiz and Riza. Sweep left. Daniels, cover the rear. They breached. Gunfire erupted. 2 hostiles down. 1 child screamed. Jasmine moved first, shielded the kid with her own body. Bullets slammed into the wall behind her. Cruz laid down cover fire, taking a round in the shoulder. Go! Jasmine yelled. They moved fast, herding the civilians down the hallway, up the sewer entrance. Outside, the compound flared with sirens and gunshots. More enemy fighters, scrambling. Harper's voice crackled in her ear. Extraction ETA 6 minutes. Hold your ground. She keyed in, not holding. We're coming to you. They broke into the open desert with hostiles behind them. Daniels fired over his shoulder. Ortiz laid down smoke. Reza guided the civilians toward the extraction point. Then Cruz dropped. Face first. Blood everywhere. Sniper, someone shouted. Jasmine Dove dragged him behind a berm, returned fire, scanning the hills. There. She squeezed the trigger. The sniper dropped like a rag doll. She pulled Cruz onto her back. Again, just like Ortiz, just like Rains. This was who she was now. And she didn't stop until the Black Hawk touched down. On the flight out, Cruz, bleeding, dazed, looked at her. You don't stop for anything, do you? She just shook her head. No, I don't. 2 days later, they stood on a windswept tarmac as the hostages were flown out. One of the kids, maybe 9, broke away from the escort and ran to her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, said nothing, just held on. Her throat locked up. She crouched and whispered, "You're safe now, okay?" He nodded, eyes wide. Then he was gone. And just like that, it all caught up to her. Every mile, every scar, every night alone, every time she'd been told no. The tears came and didn't stop for a full 5 minutes. No one said a word. Even Daniels turned his back to give her the space. Back home, Jasmine stood in her dress whites again. But this time, not in a hangar. This time, it was in front of a panel. Cameras. Flags. They were pinning a medal to her chest. One step above commendation. One step below valor. She hated the speeches. Hated the attention. But she stood still. Because this wasn't about her anymore. When it was over, a young black girl, maybe 16, approached her, eyes bright, fists clenched. She said, voice shaking. I want to join. Like you. Jasmine knelt, took her hand, and said, don't ask for permission. Take it. Later that night, she walked to the old range. It was dark, empty. Still, she pinned a fresh target. 200 yards. Dead center. She loaded one round. Fired. Bullseye. Then turned, took off her cap, and whispered, that one's for you, Colonel.